what most lawyers need are actually automations and not AI. And I also think that you can't make AI work for you until you have the automations first.
You've done some really cool stuff in the past, I guess, 6 or 8 months, right? Starting with automation to then starting to use like agentic AI tools. The thing I remember the most is I think you sent me a message at like 4 in the morning and you go,
Something like
yeah.
that.
You go, yeah, I'm definitely gonna buy a helicopter before I'm 40.
Yeah.
That was like the moment I remember the most, right? But you've been able to figure out and almost, get a really good master of these AI tools. And I think you're a really good example of taking like a bunch of ideas you had in your head to now being able to implement those um, due to the progress that's happening in AI. So thanks for being here. If you want to intro yourself and then we can sort of demo some stuff, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, sure. So, my name's John Haines. I'm an attorney in Knoxville, Tennessee. I mostly do family law, divorce type of stuff. I just sort of fell into that. My journey to being a lawyer sort of informs why I've sort of been able to do what I'm able to do. So, when I was a kid, I was an introverted, terminally online. Literally from the age of 15 to 18, I would go to school and play Quake 3, right? And then and then in what, 2004, World of Warcraft became a thing. So I spent from 2004 to 2006, World of Warcraft, wasted a huge amount of times on the internet, right? Um, like I think basically every young man, completely directionless, had literally no idea what I wanted to do. Um, Dropped out of college, joined the Navy, did that, got out of the Navy, still completely directionless, used my GI Bill, had no plans at all. But when I was in the Navy, I was stationed in Greece. So I thought, let's learn French, got a degree in French, then realized money's cool and a French degree doesn't really inform that. So I took the LSAT on a total whim. I managed to do well enough to get a full ride to the second worst law school in the state, which, if anyone from my alma mater watches this, they'll be mad about that, but it's also true. Um, because I went there, no opportunity to go to a medium or a big law firm, right? That's not how that works, which turns out to be a blessing having interacted with people in those fields. Glad I don't have to deal with that. Fell into a small firm, got got started doing family law and divorce. And then to bring this back to sort of where we're at, from day one, and this would have been 2018, so pre LLMs, this is kind of early Clio days. I Everything I interacted with, I thought, why are we doing it this way? But the first guy I ever worked for, no CRM, no file system, no organization, had to talk him into paying for Clio for a year. Clio starts rolling out features like Clio Grow with their forms, start setting those up. And that's really, when you first sort of touch on this stuff, you start seeing what led me to speak with you initially. Okay, well, if I've got a form to get the information, then most people at that time, what your standard person does is I've got a Word document, I do find replace. Well, you can only do that so many times before literally the idea of doing find replace again makes you want to go blind. Then there's Clio Draft on top of that. And you always see these efficiencies and you think, couldn't I just do blank? Like, couldn't I just automate blank? And I think that wanting to do that, LLMs exist. I hopped on Chat GPT instantly on the first release. It started off sort of as a novelty. It got more powerful. And then finally, when I reached out to you, then of course my algorithm was now, completely overrun with do this and do that automation because that's what's controlling our entire society, right? Is algorithmically driven content delivery. Anyways, um, and then I thought, oh, innate in, I can wire up all of my stuff, right? Because that was my barrier at that time was how do I get stuff to talk to one another?
Yeah.
And we started innate in automation, and then after that, sort of the rise of Claude Code happened. These IDEs, you turned me onto that, and then once I got turned on to that, it was like jet fuel. Because to get to your initial point, I could take the ideas that I had. Hey, wouldn't it be great if X happened? But I had no idea on how to make X happen. And the IDEs, the agents can bridge that gap and let me create something tangible.
that's the, I think the logical progression, right? Is certain things are automation things. Then you have agents, right, that you sort of talk to when they start doing things for you. And then I think for a lot of people, the ideal place they want to end up is having their own app or their own software that they've built, right? That's custom and suited for them.
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
talk about what was the first step like, right? Where you go from wanting to get things to talk to each other to getting the first automation set up. I guess what was the desire there, and then
Mhm.
what was the switch that flipped once you saw the first automation sort of start to come through?
Yeah. So the point in time that really led me to, my first unlock, because that really to me is how usage of LLM in our profession progresses. You have an unlock moment, it increases your efficiency. You then hit another ceiling, you have another unlock, and you sort of progress from there. For me, I started using Clio Draft, which, man, they're not going to like this. When I first started using it, I thought it was killer. And now I think it's the best way to do something no one needs anymore. If you don't know, Clio Draft is kind of extremely sophisticated merge fields that ties their input forms. What's your name? What's your address? What's going on in your case? What are we doing with your house? Are we selling it? And you can send forms to clients and then, of course, have that populate into your templates where you put your little flags, right? In X plaintiff versus Y defendant, so on and so forth. And pre-LLM, insanely powerful. And LLMs then became a thing. And rather than typing marital dissolution agreements in toto, I got to where I realized, hey, if I know what are the assets of this case, we have a house at XYZ Road. I want to split it as follows. We have this many bank accounts. I want to split it as follows. Rather than collecting that information from my client in a form and then typing everything out, if I made my Clio draft template be a prompt to feed into an LLM where my replace fields were the information the prompt needed, right? You, whatever LLM of choice, are drafting a marital dissolution agreement. It will comprise of the following sections, blah, blah, blah. Section one will divide the following real property assets, colon, then plug in your information from your client. So your client says on the form, we have these houses. The real property assets will be divided as follows, colon, information from your client then populates, I want to sell them and split them, whatever. So I just had baked into my Word documents a big prompt that I would collect the information from the client, run Clio draft to merge the fields, and then I would just literally paste. I had it just as a copy paste. I'd paste that out of Word into, at that time I was using Gemini, get the output, paste that back into Word, and then revise it from there because the LLMs would get you, say, depending on how complicated, 70 to 95% of the way there. And my thought was, why? Oh, okay, what am I doing? I am copying and pasting from one screen to another screen, into another screen, and then pasting back. A computer can do this. This is exactly what computer does. At that same time, I was using Dialpad as my voice over IP, which I still do because I think they're the best. There's a free plug. Hey, Dialpad, give me free access from now on, dude. Look at me plugging you. And so Dialpad lets you use will give you CSVs of transcripts, which is kind of helpful. And if I'm using LLMs to draft content for marital dissolution agreements, my only barrier for using LLMs to draft content for all sorts of things, and it's important to say first draft of content, right? If you're copy and pasting, hey, do my job for me based on this transcript, huge mistake. Um, I thought, okay, well, I need to download the transcripts from Dialpad. They come as a CSV, so I need to get them into like a .text file. So now I'm going to run them through an LLM. And again, I'm doing a repeatable action that a human doesn't need to do. So I called you and I was like, dude, is there a way that I can just, when I hang up the phone with somebody, I just automatically download their transcript and turn it into a usable text file. So I stop spending 45 to 60 seconds every time I hang up the phone doing this, maybe more than that when you think about latency and clicking. And that was unlock one, right? Yes, you can do something. And once you start thinking through, step one with utilizing LLMs in the practice of law, the foundation of all of it is you have to have the words to feed into the model. Nothing else works without that. And then once you have that, you sort of tier up from there. Okay, I've got all these words. What can I do with it? So that again, as always, to answer your question, an extremely long-winded diatribe, the the ability to automatically eliminate repetitive tasks that made my life easier, that's unlock number one.
I think two really interesting things there. I think for a lot of people, there's like, I remember when I was first teaching lawyers about AI or doing presentations, whatever it was, to a lot of people, automation and AI were the same thing, right? It was like
Hmm.
automation and AI, everyone said it together, and certain things were really automation things, but people would call them AI things and vice versa, right?
Right.
So I think one, it can be really valuable to hear from your perspective, what is how you think about automation versus AI and which sort of things as a lawyer fall into automation bucket and which things fall into AI bucket. The other part I think we can cover later is you talked also about like getting the right words into the model, right? The right data, right? So it understands, what's happening in this case. Here's the transcript of the most recent conversations I've had with this client, all that kind of stuff. So I think those two things are really valuable for people to understand. Maybe we can start with the automation versus AI stuff.
Yeah. So I think that for at least most lawyers who practice in the way I do, I'm not sure this is the correct response to sort of a medium or big law type of application. Although, if you're in those enterprises, you probably have literally no control over your like software anyways, and you're probably on a way too old laptop that doesn't work because whoever it is that employs you has no idea how technology works and should be paying more money for this. Um, I think that what most lawyers need are actually automations and not AI. And I also think that you can't make AI work for you until you have the automations first. To basically everything I've just described is an automation. It has nothing to do with an LLM parsing anything other than dial pad doing the transcription. But the vast majority of like low-hanging fruit for law firms that is available to them are through automations. It just so happens that now we can use AI to make those automations more easily most of the time. But if you really think through how can I make my job easier? Okay, I've got to intake clients. What does that look like? I've got to gather information from them. I've got to get them a retainer agreement. I've got to get them an invoice. I have to schedule their meeting or meetings. I have to communicate with them about their case. A lot of if them statements to indicate that I at least know something about how a computer works rather than just being full on vibe coding, right?
Yeah.
Neanderthal. Okay. Um, but little to none of that involves an actual LLM looking at things. The idea of, okay, how do I intake a client? Well, I need a form to gather information, and then when that form is submitted, I need X to happen. It's an automation, right? So much of the non-lawyering part of our jobs, the business side of it, is really just a repeatable system that happens on conditional grounds. I think then AI on top of your automations is what will be revolutionary on this side, right? I'm really talking more about, again, the not lawyering business side of the job. I can talk about the lawyering side too, where I think things are flipped a bit. Um, where what really makes the LLMs again revolutionary in a way I don't think, frankly, anyone gets yet, including the big name players, because I don't know why Well, actually, I probably do know why, but the answer to this really is not something you can buy as of right now, which is why you're so valuable, Masai. People just don't get it. They just don't know how much they need you. I'm bearing the lead on this. The the value is there are certain aspects of those intake functions, those communication functions, which, because of the nature of lawyering, exist in a gray area. I think a lot about how far behind the legal profession is compared to basically everything else. And it's because of the subjectivity that populates all or most of our profession. If I'm intaking a client, there's just opinion-based statements that are relevant. If I'm getting a divorce, how are we going to do, or if I'm doing a divorce and I'm talking about an MDA, how are we going to divide the equity in the home? Compare that to a dentist. Dentist just needs first name, last name, statistical information that can be plugged into a box, and then calendar date. That represents some of what we do, but we always have these fact-based subjective knobs that may affect our sort of decision tree in these workflows. So that to me is where the AI comes in on top of it. But you can't start making those sort of, okay, where's the gray area? Where do I need an AI reasoning on top of a decision branch until you have that foundational workflow, right? It's just, to me, it's not possible. It's cart before the horse if you think you're going to plug LLMs just into your practice of law. If you don't have strong workflows first, it's not feasible. Step one for anyone trying to do this will be identify your repeatable tasks that computer can do, make computer do it, knock all of that out, then see where you can put agents and AI on top of that. If what you're doing is in your intake flow, once someone submits their intake, you have a paralegal read their information and decide, is this a good case? Is this a bad case? What should the retainer be, right? Reasoning based upon text coming in. Get the paralegal to do that. And then that's where you plug in the agent. Now, the agent reads that, you define the criteria for success, triage, whatever, and now you've saved more time. You got to make the baseline saves first. So that's that is the workflows versus AI to me. And then I talked myself. What's the second part of your question that I definitely talked myself out of remembering?
Well, so the second part is about data, right? So I think it's sort of two things go together. One, you
Hmm.
talk about sort of how do you use
Right.
AI on the business side of a law firm. I think also it'd be interesting to hear how AI is useful to you on the actual legal side, right?
Yeah.
Um, and in that entire conversation, the data is going to be really important, right? Like where does
Yes.
everything live? Is it in Drive? Is it in Clio?
Hmm.
Where is everything? And then how do you think people should go about making sure all that data ends up in the model? And then what have been some things
Yeah.
you've been able to do to make sure all that stuff is in the
Yeah.
right.
Got it. So like I said earlier, there's unlock tiers. Hopefully you can't hear the motorcycle driving by my office. Um, so unlock journey, step one is, okay, I can have these workflows, I can make all of this stuff happen. Then when you start interacting with the models, I think this is where most people are getting stuck too. They figure out, okay, LLM can do stuff for me, but they spend as much time getting the information into the model and then extracting it from the model and repurposing that information that they think, why would I not just do find replace? It's taking me longer to get there. Why am I taking the road around the mountain when I've been going through the tunnel for 20 years? So the next sort of barrier run into on your AI journey is, great, I see how this can work, but now this actually only saves me time if I have the full top to bottom suite solved. And step one of that is the data. The If you think about, or at least, if I think about, right, within my own practice of law, all right, what sort of information do I need to then be able to start injecting agents into it? Number one, I need intake information. How can I get that? I can get that through forms. I know I have to make an initial pleading. Statutorily, initial pleading is comprised of the following elements, blah, blah, blah. That's going to be true for any area of the practice of law. An initial case for battery, right, to go back to law school, must contain these elements. Negligence, right, duty, breach, cause, proximate cause, liability. I have to get all this, so I have to gather information about that. I'm sure that's been solved on a PI place because that's a great plugging in an intake there with an AI agent to get your elements there. Great. Anyways, so I'm going to gather one from just my client giving it to me in writing. How else do I interact with my clients? I talk to them about stuff. Client calls me. I need you to do something on my case. Why? My husband hit me with a brick. I need an order of protection. Great. Tell me the date, time, and location where the incident that led to you being hit with a brick began. Where were you? Right? I got to do a direct examination of my client to gain the information, to put in the pleading, to file with the court, to then go do the direct examination in court. How do I gather that? Traditionally, it's call them on the phone, bring them into your office, talk to them, make your notes, write up the motion. Well, that's solved now. How's about call them on the phone? Hey, is it okay if I record this conversation for the purpose of being used internally so that I can make notes to help me draft your motion? Sure, is what basically everyone says. In my office, I'm talking to you right now on my big Yeti microphone that is extremely obvious, where I say, hey, is it okay if I start recording this? Same thing I just said to not repeat myself. Sure. So now I'm gathering the data from my in-person or phone conferences. Get on Zoom, turn on the AI agent for Zoom. There's a million of them at this point. Google Meet, turn it on. I'm acquiring the words relevant to my job, which that's kind of your sources. It's either my client can tell me in writing to populate identifiable, repeatable fields, or I can talk to my client to extract from them the elements relevant to whatever legal action I'm taking. True of anything. That's true of a probate attorney. That's true of a criminal defense attorney. It's true of a divorce lawyer. It's true of a business lawyer. Um, and there's not that many surface areas where you got to capture it. So you only have to solve getting the data in just a few places, and then you can tear up again. Now that I've got the data, how do I reduce friction as much as possible from getting data into model? That's the next step, right? It's the next level up.
One of the things that I think is valuable, which a lot of people overlook in terms of using AI, and I think it's going to be valuable as we go more into, more concrete use cases that you're talking about,
Hmm.
are I think the major things people started using AI for summarization or for drafting right away, right?
Hmm.
But there are a bunch of sort of intermediate things that people have skipped over, right? So, for example, parsing information out of a transcript, right? You spoke to a client for 20, 30 minutes,
Hmm.
figure out date, time, location, and whatever basic data might go into a form or into a document later. I think that's really valuable. Um, I think the other thing I wanted to ask you about, I'm actually curious to hear your position on, is the main sales pitch to AI for AI to lawyers is time savings, right?
Hmm.
I'm curious to see what you think about that value proposition versus other ways that AI can be valuable or has been valuable to you or might be valuable to lawyers besides just saving time.
Yeah. My answer to that wraps into what you're saying about summarizing and parsing,
Yeah.
because I think that concept is a massive disconnect between what the engineers or developers working with LLM solutions in legal tech. I don't know enough about other industries to have an opinion. Um, I think that's a massive disconnect because between what the non-professionals that know more about the LLMs think is valuable and what is actually valuable to the lawyers. What do I mean? The the problem with leaning too much into summarizing, in my opinion, is that you are now, I've coined this phrase. When people start saying this, I definitely started it. It's preparing to be unprepared. I have had quite a few experiences now where I know a lawyer on the other side of the case is reading AI summaries, is reading AI generated deposition questions. And the issue is they have all of these words that the model has spit out from whatever they've fed into it, but they didn't look at the underlying documents. And when the rubber meets the road in this profession, it happens so infrequently, but all things revolve around it. If you go to court and you have a witness on the stand, the bullet point summary of the model is not how you do a good direct or cross examination. You've got to know the stuff that you're talking about better than the witness. And if you lean too heavily on summarization, you're going to have all your 30 pages of questions, but you don't know why you're asking them. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't think there's value there. I just think that time savings is the wrong pitch to lawyers. And I, I'm not going to pretend like I have figured this out from the jump. I too was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do stuff so much faster. It's going to be great. What I have realized in the last probably 3 to 4 months, the value is time savings, but it's not doing your job more quickly. It's not offloading the lawyering part of your job to an agent, to a model. It is expanding the amount of time you have to dedicate to the parts that make you better at this job and that are unique to lawyering. By way of example, I could get on Lexis or Westlaw on a case. Let's say I need to write a brief, a memorandum of law about something. I could go on Lexis AI, find me the 7 most important cases on this topic, or I could go on the Lexis AI and be like, draft me a memorandum. They have that functionality, which is a huge mistake, but whatever. Don't let me yuck your yum, I guess, person watching this that thinks that's a good idea. Um, and then the model will go off, pull the cases, and draft the memorandum for you. And now what are you doing? Reading this thing based on cases you didn't read? The way better way to do this, to make my point, is sure, use AI tools to help you with plain language search of legal databases. That's great. Read the cases, download the cases, identify the relevant portion of the cases, form your argument, all of the stuff that you get taught to do in law school that when you come out and have a job, at least if you're like me, solo small firm, you have zero time to actually do because you got to have the phone call with the lady that got hit with the brick 6 times a day, right? Um, Read all the cases, have an outline, understand how LLMs work, and now your prompt to your LLM can be, hey, I want you to do a first draft of a memorandum of law. In this case, I represent blank. The outline I've prepared is attached to this as Word document 1, 2, 3. I want you to focus on, and you can have this in your document, for example, sections blah, blah, and blah from case X, Y, and Z as well. Give me a first output. If you're doing this in a model and you want to put it into Word, here's a free tip for you. Have it output as a single block of text with no punctuation or formatting so that when you paste it into Word, you can just do inline to break out your paragraphs rather than faffing around with the Arial bold font that LLMs give you. And now, in my same billable window of, let's say, 4 hours, rather than spending 20 minutes doing the legal research and 3 hours and 40 minutes writing my brief, I've done 3 hours of reading the cases, thinking through my argument, and I've compressed the first draft of my brief to the LLM. Will do that in 30 seconds, depending on your model. And now I'm editing output to place it in my own voice, unless you prompted the LLM to do that. Uh, and revising something, which, I mean, don't take it from me, right? There's that old Antonin Scalia interview where he basically says words to the effect of the edit is really where you do your best work in legal writing. So the the sales pitch really isn't save time because all lawyers will be like, why would I do that? Less billable time. The sales pitch is do a better job. The I to steal from Scott Galloway, who as a middle-aged bald white man, I suppose Scott Galloway is obviously my patron saint. Um, he's always saying it's the old Navy method, right? 80% of the value at 50% of the price. The sales pitch for AI is 130% of the value at 100% of the price. That's what'll be revolutionary. You do better work in the same amount of time. That's the real value. That's what's coming down the pipe. That's the way to use this stuff that no one gets. And I think it's because of how unique our industry is. To me, again, and do I really know what I'm talking about? No, but as a middle-aged white man, I'm confident that I know the answer to everything, right? Um, in other industries, right, I can see how cutting down the time, less time per task equals more dollars. It's not really to me like that in the legal profession. I can increase my value to my customer by just doing better. Maybe like that, there are some aspects, right, to switch back to the non-legal side. For sure, less time there is dollars. I'm spending less time looking at intakes. I'm spending less time sending out contracts sold. That frees me up to do more time billing for actual work that helps me do my job better.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's an amplifier, right, of
Yes.
who you are as a person and who you are as a lawyer as well, right? I think if you're good at what you do, if you're thorough, then you can be even more thorough. You can multiply the quality of work that you're already outputting. And I think
Mhm.
obviously the opposite is true as well, right? If you're not very thorough or not very good at what you do, then you get the slop outputs, right?
Yeah. And that's going to be the barrier is there's a foundational level of knowledge you need, not just in the functionality of LLMs, because they're so dangerous if you don't know how it works. Are you sending client information unscrubbed to a model that's scraping your data and violating the rules of professional conduct for, I'm sure, every state? That's a problem. Do you not understand how the model works, right? It's not thinking. You are not interfacing with a synthetic consciousness. You are interfacing with a pattern matching algorithm that just algorithmically decides the most likely next word in this sequence of words is X. It just so happens to mirror conscious reasoning by doing it, but it isn't. Do you understand what a system prompt is? Do you understand the harness around your output? If no, you're going to get extremely confident, extremely compelling output. But if you don't know enough to direct it, right, it's okay. A Formula One car is insanely fast. If I got in one, I would crash into a wall instantly. I can't handle it, right? The if you have to have that LLM knowledge, but then just knowledge of how your computer works too, of systems, of processes. What's the best way for me to connect? Do I need Microsoft Office 365? Do I need Google Drive? You have to solve for all of these things. And the barrier, again, where someone like you is insanely valuable to lawyers is if you're not a terminally online introvert for your entire youth, it's unlikely you know enough to be able to make this work end to end. And the promise of AI is only realized, my idea of supercharging yourself, it's only realized if you have everything done end to end. You really there are some use cases, right, where you can do some real low-hanging fruit value return, but it's not a linear trajectory of value in AI. It is, I think of it, I mean, my metaphor for it is it's like striking oil. You dig and you dig and you dig. You don't get any oil until you hit the well. And I think a lot of the problem is lawyers don't understand that there's oil down there. Lawyers get discouraged when you dig for one day and there's no oil, and they don't get, you only got to strike it once and then the oil comes out of the ground. And unless and until our entire profession realizes that, great for me because I just have an easier time making money. But without people getting that, they won't know the extreme value that people like you represent. They won't know the extreme value that the LLM represents. And all they will know is, hey, oh yeah, I pasted something into Chat GPT and it hallucinated something, right? Just because you crashed the Ferrari doesn't mean the Ferrari's not fast. It just means you can't drive it. That's the issue. And again, I don't think it actually gets fixed until there's more people like me lapping you while you're standing still. So, get with the program and start giving Masai all your money, basically, is the actual answer to this.
Okay, got it. I think you talked about something really interesting though, because I've seen this, right? I've had firms like you, for example, where the principal's really involved in the whole process,
Mhm.
right? You're figuring out the new capabilities of the models, you're using them on your own, et cetera, et cetera. And I've had the opposite as well, right? Where it's more like people are sort of offloading things to their staff. And I found that the firms where the more invested the managing partner or the principal attorney is in the entire transformation process, the more interested they are in the technology and the more they're using it, I found those tend to be more successful than the opposite. Can you speak to that at all in terms of how important it is for if you're running a firm for you to not just sort of like offload the AI transformation to a department outside of yourself, but to actually be hands-on on it?
Yeah, yeah. There has to be someone, ideally either the person in charge, the person in charge needs to be invested fully, or they need to be smart enough to identify the person that's invested fully and then just do what they say. Otherwise, it will not work. You have to fully commit to a process of transforming everything you do. How much everything you do comprises of is, of course, how up to speed are you? But without that, again, it will not work. And it'll be my metaphor of you crashed the car and decided the car isn't drivable. Without the buy-in of somebody that doesn't have to ask somebody else. Hell, I was in the military. This was a problem in the military too. If the person making decisions doesn't know as much as the person beneath them, that's a problem, right? So if you're the person in charge and no one, and you don't have some 20 to 30 something who is all in on this, then you've got to get up to speed, and it's going to be nights and weekends. And it isn't presently existential. I think the vast majority is way, way, way behind the power curve. But I think the horizon on this becoming existential, 5 to 6 years, more and more people will figure it out. And what AI offers, right? The compression of time spent on non-legal tasks allows more work to be done by fewer people, and your phone's going to start ringing less if you don't get with the program. It's got to be the principal talking to someone like you, educating themselves, or just being willing to give dollars, allocate dollars to the person that's in, which is risky. But it just won't work without that. Anything less than jumping in both feet. And you don't have to jump into the deep end, but you got to get in the pool and start walking towards the deep end and understand this vision will not be realized again in a linear fashion. There will be minimal gains until it all works together, at which point you finally get there.
Can you talk about the stack as well? We talked about it earlier, right? Sort of like um if someone's you know running a firm, they're starting to think about they want to do AI transformation stuff. We talked a bit about how automations generally come before you can really get a lot of the value from AI. I think also a precursor to that, to even being able to do automations, is what's your software stack, right? There are certain case management systems that don't allow you to integrate with their API. They have a closed API, right? Which is
Hmm.
something that just sort of stops you in your tracks of doing anything with automations.
Hmm.
So could you talk a little bit about your technology stack, right? I mean, all the platforms you have are really integrate really well with each other. They play really well with each other.
Yeah.
Can you give a little bit of advice on that?
Sure. I was for the longest time. So first baseline case management software for many years. I have been a Clio advocate. I still like Clio. Don't get mad at me, Clio. Um, their API is super open, lets you connect to everything. It's great. I think it's the reason they've risen to prominence. I think they've sort of lost sight of the ball, and I don't blame them because from where I sit, the entire legal tech industry doesn't have their eye on the ball on this. But that's step one. Have a case management software that you can have access to the API. If you don't know what that means, see our previous discussion on you have to figure it out. Um, Clio can't do everything. What else do you need, in my opinion? I need a way to get transcripts from phone calls to be a lawyer subsequent to whatever the one party or two party consent laws of your state, right? Get your clients to agree to it on the phone, obviously. Okay. But I need to start gathering the words. What does that look like? A voice over IP provider that at least gives me recordings because I can feed those into an LLM, or even better, gives me a transcript. I think Dialpad is by far the best in that area. Super open API, super easy to connect to. All right. What else do I need? These files need to go somewhere. Well, Clio has their Clio file system, which I think is garbage, and they know. I've told them that to their faces, so that's not news to them. You've got Box, you've got Google Drive. I personally use Google Drive. I don't actually think it's the best, but I think the Google Workspace has the strongest native AI integrations. Here's a nice low-hanging fruit. Stop using Microsoft Word. Start using Google Docs because Gemini on the sidebar in Google Docs is outrageous right now. There's an easy. You want some low-hanging fruit? Use Gemini in the sidebar on Google Docs. You'll be amazed. That'll easy time saving right there.
There any chance you can share screen and show us that? Show us
Yeah.
the Google Gemini on the in Google
Oh
Doc?
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And you can see what I did in our little break there. I went to Google Docs, opened up Gemini in the sidebar. I typed in generating an example marital dissolution agreement for the purpose of displaying the capabilities of Gemini and Docs, right? Bloop. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. So let's say I'm now looking at an actual marital dissolution agreement and I decide, okay, it doesn't, all this has is waivers, right? So I can just say over here, add a new section where you think it makes the most rational sense that awards the marital residence at 123 Masai Avenue to the wife, and husband will receive in exchange $50,000 as his share of the equity. Okay, bloop. And this is in alpha. I don't know that this is rolled out to everybody. I think you've got to be Google Workspace. Google Workspace with the AI stuff. They've moved their pricing tiers around. I'm not entirely sure. Hey, you know what you could do? You could ask AI how this is available, and it would tell you in a second. Okay, so what has the model done? It has added a new section, which is surfacing to me, division of real property, where it's typed out what I've said. I can insert this, I can reject it. It has then incremented the numbers on the rest of this, right, which makes logical sense. Okay, bloop, accept all, done, right? Quick and easy example. That is, again, low-hanging fruit. What common thing that you'll run into in marital dissolution agreements is you'll have like a long paragraph full of pronouns. Maybe you want to use canned language again, right? But now I'm going to change it to wife to husband. Okay, I can go through and change wife to husband like it's 1997, or I can just say change paragraph 4, wife needs to be husband and vice versa. Change paragraph 4, it's a same-sex marriage. Replace the gender pronouns with last names of the parties, last names of the parties, right? So once you've done this enough, you start seeing, oh, I can use AI for that. Oh, I can use AI for that. And this is something that's not right. You just got to know it's there and spend some time with it. The first thing you'll do with these AI tools is you'll give a real garbage prompt. You won't learn the guardrails you need to put in your prompt, the way to speak to these models, unless you play with them. And sort of what I was saying earlier, you have to understand what it is you're interacting with so that you know, right? I'm not talking to a true intelligence. I need to give this a language. I need to speak to it in a way. I think of prompting more as like sculpture, right? I know what I want it to look like on the output. How can I describe where I want to get, right? I'm crafting its response. Yeah, easy. Gemini in Sheets, if you're doing anything with an Excel spreadsheet, use Google Sheets and open up Gemini in Sheets and have it build the spreadsheet. That's a perfect example of what I was saying earlier. You got to know how the LLM works. You also have to have baseline computer knowledge. Spreadsheets for a million years have been able to auto tabulate based upon changing columns above them, right? In Microsoft Excel, equal sum, left parentheses, A3 to A7, close parentheses, enter. So you could go to Google Sheets and say, I'm uploading bank records of assets and debts, create an Excel spreadsheet of this. That's one way to do it. That would give you a result that is probably crap, like it looks nice, but it's not usable. You could say instead, I'm, I mean, here's a thing that you can definitely, that I've done before I got all my fancy stuff in place that I use now for all the things I've built for myself, which we'll talk about later. Um, get a non, right, you're not Gemini in Excel, get an agent to ingest, say your Notebook LM or just your whatever, your Chat GPT, ingest statements, tell it to output as a comma separated variable, CSV sheet, assets, debts with their values, copy that output. Now go to Gemini for Sheets. I'm pasting to you a CSV that represents the financial assets and debts of a marriage. I want you to build for me a spreadsheet that clearly organizes these. I would like it to be in the following order: first real property, then bank accounts, then retirement accounts, then unsecured debts. I would like each column to have a formula that auto tabulates so that if I insert new rows, that and myself, once this is over, the sums and totals will display correctly. I would like the sums to be displayed as a subtotal under each asset section and a global total at the bottom. I would also propose that the husband receive 60% of the assets. Please tabulate 3 different ways for a husband to receive 60% of the assets. Number 1 will be using liquid accounts only. Number 2 will be using interest in the marital property and liquid accounts. And number 3 will be whatever you decide is the most equitable way to do that outside of the 2 I've already given you, right? Do that. Why can I just say all this stuff? Because I've spent time dealing with these things, right? Which again, if to continue doing what I always do is be the dead horse. You got it. You got to start now. Otherwise, there's going to be more of me coming for your business, and you're not going to be able to compete. You're going to roll in. You're going to have a trial, and opposing counsel is going to have a stack of documents that they know what's in them, but that they didn't spend all their time typing. They spent all their time knowing what's in them, and you're going to get smoked because you're going to have charged your client just as much money and produce 10% the work product, and you're going to know 10% amount of the case, and that will be the doom of the non-adopter of this technology.
Yeah. I think that's the key principle in all of it, and it's going around a lot right now, is that you can outsource work, you can sometimes outsource thinking, but you can't outsource understanding, right? So you have to understand what's going on, you have to understand what good and bad looks like, and you can't
Yep.
really outsource that. You can never outsource that to AI.
Yeah. And I think that like the example I just gave represents the challenge between the 2 aspects of making this happen, right? The people, folks like you that know how the AI works, and the lawyers, right? You never in a million years, because you don't do this every day, you wouldn't know that your end user needs equitable division proposals of different setups, right? That's fine, which makes total sense. The onus truly at this point, I think this will change as like, frankly, as you and people like you gain more experience with building out these systems, you'll then be able to say, hey, wouldn't we want to do X, Y, and Z on this as well? But at present, the onus is on the owner of the business to understand what these tools are capable of doing and then communicate to you. If someone gave you clear guidance, Masai, I want to be able to ingest documents that come in this format that generally have X, Y, and Z. I want the final output to be comprised of these things. I want to be able to turn these knobs, right? The scenarios are blank. I can give to you 1,000 pages of examples, right? Then you can be more effective because they're passing to you a clear vision of the desired output. And now you can act on that. If they just come to you and say, I want AI, that's not helpful to you. You can't do anything for them, or you've got to quote them some insane number that they're like, why would I do that? It's like, because you're not helping me help you. And I've got to come audit everything you do to figure out what it is I can do for you because you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Very fair. So we're going through the stack. So we have Clio, we've got a case
Hmm.
management system, we've got Google Drive, we've got
Hmm.
voice over IP.
Hmm.
Anything else? Obviously, I want to ask about AI as well, right? Like, how do you think about the different LLMs? Which ones do you use? Which ones do you recommend attorneys use?
Yep.
Just to round out the stack.
Yeah, I think other just table stakes stack components. You need some sort of document scanner. If you're not OCRing everything that comes in through your door, again, okay, complain to me via carrier pigeon after this too about how rude I'm being, right? Definitely OCR everything. I would say some sort of digital voice recorder. I think Plod, it's insane. Like the success of Plod, at least the perceived success from the amount I see it, compared to how super duper you don't need that, and it's actually like not a great solution to the problem, is uh, proves the ignorance of the user base, right? Yeah, let me pay a monthly subscription for a not good recorder to run bad automations on data that's not private, right? It's insane. Buy a digital voice recorder that automatically uploads over Wi-Fi and record your stuff, walk into your office, have you or someone, or figure out how yourself to every time you upload a recording, turn it into a transcript, parse the transcript, figure out where it should go, summarize the transcript, email me, right? That's better than Plod. What do you know? How much does that cost? $0 and 2 hours of your time in Claude Code. But so a digital voice recorder, a scanner, um, that sort of rounds out like your baseline stack of uh, get information. And then it becomes sort of how do you leverage it from there. As far as models, I so I'm in I use I think what model you use first depends on are you connecting via API or are you just paying a subscription? If you're paying a subscription, you're gonna have there's gonna be a ceiling on what you're capable of. You can really only do the full unlock on like Magic if you're paying via API. Um, I am really model agnostic with respect to the legal profession because I think they're all good enough to do what we need them to do. I don't think the model it's Gemini at 3.5 Flash, Gemini 3.5 thinking, that can probably crush through everything or almost everything we need if you have good prompting, good information, right? Opus, Sonnet, totally fine. GPT, totally fine. Kind of doesn't matter if you're on the subscription model. Table stakes is to have a subscription model that doesn't scrape your data. Duh. But again, if you don't know what that is, look into it. Um, if you are interacting via API, I'm probably uh, swimming against the current, at least of like most people that are connecting to models via API. The Google models are insanely cheap relative to the ones from definitely Anthropic and less so OpenAI. But whatever, they're going to be bankrupt. So, but um, they're still again they're good enough. So if I'm paying per token, I use Gemini 2.5 Lite for probably 80% of the stuff I'm using an API call. And then I do 3.1 Pro for my like reasoning stuff, which is limited to, MDAs, motions, and I'll use 3.5 Flash, but on no reasoning for stuff like complaints, complaints for divorce, right? Initial petitions, because I have surrounding that a wrapper of like few shot prompting of what those should look like. So you just don't need that much horsepower behind it, right? So I want cheap, fast tokens for stuff like that. Um, yeah, the actual probably best answer, and I think where the industry has already converged or will converge on is who cares? Have a router that can identify what's the best model for the task and send it to that and minimize cost relative to required power of output. But with respect to the legal profession, the tasks we're asking of LLMs are number one, fully within the meaty part of what they're good at. Read lots of words and output tokens based on lots of words. That's everything we do, most everything we do. So I think really our applications are more, am I giving solid information for the model to act on? And then you really don't need a frontier model for everything or almost everything for like true legal applications. Now, that's my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair. It's like trying to kill a mosquito with a cannon, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes.
yeah.
Yeah.
You don't need Fable to do a notice of appearance, right? Haiku can handle
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think that's a nuance I think a lot of people miss, right? In terms of
Yeah.
obviously we're talking about maybe a couple of dollars here, maybe a couple $100 a month that we're talking about. But
Hmm.
when you start using this stuff more and more, it does start to add up.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's when you start getting the full stack together. It's like, oh, I could do this. Well, okay, you're going to pay for the tokens on that. Oh, I could do this. You're going to pay for the tokens on that. And it doesn't matter until it matters, right? It's 21 cents when you do it the first time, and then it's $2.10, and then it's $21. You're like, wait a second,
Yeah,
what's the value add here?
yeah. Okay, got it. So we're that pretty much rounds out the stack conversation then, right?
Yep.
So we have the stack. We talked about getting your automation set up, right? Having things just automatically happen in the background. Did you want to say anything else about automations or use cases for automations before we move on to?
No, yeah, because I think it's going to be, I think it's applicable. Like people just got to figure out what do they need automated, and it's
Yeah.
everything, but
Yeah.
it's, you got to solve it yourself.
Got it. Okay, so that's sort of the bottom layer, right? Was what your stack is, then automations on top of it.
Mhm.
Then I think the next step is this was the really cool part for me, right? Was saying you get familiar with anti-gravity. So you could talk about sort of like the anti-gravity moment, right? I think we had a conversation. I mentioned it sort of offhand. I think you should check this out.
Yeah.
I came back like 3 or 4 days later, and you built out this whole thing. So you could tell that story and what that means, sort of how that fits on the next level of the stack.
Yeah. So sort of my next progression in AI, my AI journey. I don't know what's that's like a I'll put an album of that, right? I'll go like I'll get that in wooden letters and put it over my kitchen or something, right? Um, was when IDEs sort of rose to prevalence. And I'm talking about like it's the Roman Empire. You had been putting content on your website, and I'd been seeing it algorithmically, right? Claude Code first, and then I was in the Google workspace, and just sort of on a whim, I was like, oh, Google launched anti-gravity, and you had been pushing me to check out coding agents. And I just thought, dude, that's overkill. There's no way I'm going to do this. But you convinced me. And I started using Google Anti-Gravity at the time. And yeah, I remember it was, we had set up the transcript automation. And I was thinking, okay, now I need to start getting why can't I replace Clio Draft was my thought. I was like, why am I using find replace when LLM can output content? I'd sort of been asking you, um, hey, can I like start having output into a docx that is pre-formatted with a case style the way I like it? And we were sort of going back and forth, and I was being super annoying because I thought, dude, can the spacing be slightly bigger? Can this be aligned differently? Right. And you're like, man, you can just feed this into at that time, I want to say code work, right? But Claude Code something, It's like, I don't know, that'd be too much. But I finally dove into it, and then I instantly it's writing, I'm downloading Python dependencies to then be able to output it, right? I'm like, oh, this is incredible. I get it, right? And it was another unlock. I was like, I totally get it. And that was really the moment when I realized everything I've ever wanted to make work is available to me now through initially it was anti-gravity. I've graduated to Claude Code in the terminal. But through the use of agentic coding agents to make the software for myself that I need, right? It's really revolutionary, and it is I mean, and this isn't news to like, especially you guys, right? Like, yeah, dude, the how good coding agents are, what they can build for you so quickly is outrageous, frankly.
Yeah, I think that's sort of like it's probably the biggest unlock in AI, right? Is like there was a whole thing, famous article that came out a few years ago, software is eating the world, right? Where software is sort of like going into every industry. And then now you have AI is eating software, right? Where you have
Mhm.
AI is at least, if not creating a lot of the software that's out there, is playing a heavy role in creating a lot of software that's out there. And I think also a lot of times with software, the hard thing about software is scaling it, right? If you have to scale a software to hundreds of thousands of users or millions of users, it gets complicated. But
Hmm.
if we're talking about a law firm, if you're 5, 10, 20, 30, even up to 100 people, not super complicated to build an app that has 100 users versus, 100,000 users. Um,
Hmm.
I think it'd be really cool if you can sort of show some of the things that you've been able to do in whether it's anti-gravity or it's in Claude Code, just so people can see, like what sort of ideas you had about things and how you're able to make those reality.
Yeah. Yeah, let me pop over on share screen. Okay, so let me move this share bar so I can navigate. So the first thing I ever built was my own bespoke document generator, which I'm definitely not going to show anybody because it's such a good idea. Someone will steal it from me. I'm not having that happen, right? But it's great. I'll sell it to you in a few months. Okay, call me in a few months, and I'll let you pay me to use it. Um, but what I will show to you is, all right, if I'm going to have an automated document generator, I need to, like we talked about at the beginning of this conversation, I need to acquire information from my clients. Well, how am I going to do that? What does everything start with? It starts with an intake form. How did I build this out? Step one, I, go to anti-gravity, do me a intake form, right? Bloop, and it does the stuff, and I get an AI slop glass morphism screen, but it's still outrageous the quality to time ratio, right? So from there, like I'm like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. So I then go down the rabbit hole. This was into February, early March of this year, 2026. I go down the rabbit hole and I'm just building out forms, right? With no idea what I'm doing. And I only realize after I'm probably 2 sleepless weeks into it, every single thing I've built is just full on um, new code every time, no consistency, no global components, right? Total garbage, right? Anyone who knows anything about development, which isn't me, would be like, wow, this is total crap, right? I at least from, I don't know, maybe not a wasted youth, a youth on internet, know enough to know, okay, this is an issue, and I start giving prompts like, hey, I don't want prompt injection to be a thing from my users. I want my code base to be more efficient, right? And AI is like, well, here's the thing you could do. How's about instead of your crappy, disorganized library that I've built for you because you didn't give me good directions because you didn't know what you were doing, why don't you use the ShadCN shared component library, right? I'm like, oh, great. Retrofit with that. Um, Agent skills are all over my algorithm, right? Why am I building these forms one at a time painstakingly? Why don't I make an agent skill that now I have enough forms the way I like them, and I've sort of de-slopped them by, learning reading something to learn look at the docs for ShadCN, look at the docs for React and see what is, good code, right? Again, I don't know really anything. I just know enough to know that I don't know something, right? Which AI can help you with if you're smart enough, savvy enough, right, to not pat myself on the back too much, to go down the rabbit hole. So I build a skill that then looks at what I've built, that then I get to the point where rather than building page by page, field by field, these forms painstakingly, I can upload an example of the pleading that I'm trying to populate with these forms. I can feed into this skill the case law that is relevant to the forms, and then the skill builds the form for me. I'm in taking, X, Y, and Z. So, I build out my intake stuff, right? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. This is just basic. What's your name? I guess I'm not going to dox myself on your video, right? But my compress progress through this. This thing creates a JSON that has the information that I can then feed into a large language model to do stuff down the line. Okay. What's my sort of next increasing level of look at what I did? One of the things in the state of Tennessee that you need in a custody case with children is a permanent parenting plan. I, I don't know every jurisdiction, but I do interact with multiple jurisdictions, and everywhere else has some permutation of this concept. Well, what do I need in Tennessee for that? I need to define a day-to-day residential schedule. Why are there question marks here? Because this is just an example, right, with nothing preloaded, but what have I gotten AI to do for me? If someone fills out for me a precursor to this, divorce is the most obvious one, I will ingest the names of the parties from that precursor document. Joe Smith and Sandy Smith. I will know that one is the wife and one is the husband. Ipso facto, one is the mother and one is the father. And then this screen, rather than question marks, will have mom and dad. I will know who filled out the form, mom or dad, if whoever filled out the form is necessarily my client. So I will display this such that my client is in bold with a highlight around their days, right, is a nice thing. Um, what typically happens, which again, stuff that only I know because I'm the lawyer, I'm the only person that would know to do this. Day-to-day schedules are typically week on, week off, every other weekend, other things. It'd be nice if I could do that. Great. Tell AI to do it. What do I want? I want a 7 on, 7 off with exchanges on Fridays. I want the exchanges on Sundays. I want the exchanges on Mondays. If I pick that, it will populate again because I don't have the mom and dad flags here, right? But you can see how these are not gray, or these are lower and these are more bold. And now my calculator down here is telling how many days go to each one. What are my other options? 223, 2255. If you do anything in divorce, you know what that means. Now my people can just pick this. When I progress through this, I'll do the speed round on this one. Oh yeah, I've got, no, there's no supervision. What's the next component of this? It is where are the exchanges going to be? Where are the exchanges going to take place? What time are the exchanges going to take place? Again, only the lawyer who does the job would know we need to capture this information, know what options exist from doing this over and over again. Great. What's next in our parenting plan? There's a day-to-day schedule. They fill this out. What's next? There are school vacations. What should we do for school vacation? Just by way of example, we currently have equal time because we're doing week on, week off. Let's say that I want to give the entire spring vacation to plaintiff in this case. Now this is tabulated. That's plus 5 days to plaintiff. Updated it. What comes next in these cases? Decision making. I pre-populate with joint and I give little explainer popovers that try and dissuade people from selecting anything other than joint because that's generally a bad idea. That's going to make the judge not like you unless there's a really strong basis for it. What's next? And I wanted to get here because this is another good example. Child support. And I have built in here a child support estimator that populates automatically with the number of days from our previous schedules, gives a child support obligation, allows me to change these numbers and surfaces to my client different information. And how did I do this? I told at this point, no, it was still anti-gravity at this point. I pointed it at the Tennessee Child Support Guidelines, which are extensive and on the web, which LLMs can read. I told it to build this for me. It pulled down the formulas that are how the child support calculator works and just wrote this for me. These are mostly correct. There's a little bit of nuance that I avoided for the purpose of this, right? But like, I mean, that's this little screen right here is so much better than the locked down child support worksheet that the state of Tennessee uses. It's an Excel spreadsheet that has all these formulas locked behind it. That's atrocious. And your clients aren't going to look at that. Now I get to show people this screen. No one has this but me in this state. And I didn't do it. Claude Code did it, right? And it did it correctly based on the actual child support formula. Okay. And then again, what does this do? it outputs this as JSON, right? If you don't know what I'm saying, again, it's like intimidating, but the actual components for our use cases as lawyers are so not complicated. We're not Amazon. I just need you to tell me your husband's last name and then plug it into a document. It's not crazy. Um, so you really don't need a ton of knowledge. You need foundational knowledge. Caveat to that is you do need to either figure out on your own or talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about for the things you'll never learn on your own, right? Security risks, data risks, right? How do I structure, what sort of armor do I put around my vibe coded garbage, right? To then make it actually usable. Okay. Like the value of the lawyer is, again, the royal you or other developers will never be able to know what this needs to look like and what it needs to capture. But the lawyers will never be able to know what is Zod schema validation, what is contact injection, right? Prompt injection, right? What are tokens? How do I associate tokens with these so they're unique to my clients when they answer them? Do I need to be able to revoke the tokens, right? That stuff that then you can impart easily, and the lawyer's got to be come on board, which to sort of mirror a theme of this conversation, has to be willing to just turn over the wheels to the reins. Pick your metaphor. We're doing a horse or car, reins or wheel, right? Last thing, and then I'll show you a few more things. Because this will be a good example to talk about what we began this conversation with, which is the interaction between workflow and AI. Everything we're doing here is workflow. AI coding agents allowed me to build it, but this is not, AI. This is just capturing. This has been on the internet for as long as the internet has been internet, right? A box where someone puts in input that then is stored in a database. That's not new. If I open up my MDA questionnaire, good example of how we can do both, right? So in a marital dissolution agreement, we need to identify assets and debts, and we need to divide assets and debts. So we ask our person, do they own real property? Yes, they do. What's the address? As I dox myself, 123, nobody come kidnap me from my house. 123 Smith Street. We're in Knoxville, Tennessee. And who's on the deed? Let's say both. Is there a mortgage? Let's say no. What's the fair market value? It's $250,000 on this property. Okay, I know what the asset is. That is workflow. Now I need to know, what does this person want to do with the property? That is subjective. So I tell them, hey, what properties are we going to decide on? Tell me what you want to do. Huge problem we have to deal with is getting people to tell us actual answers using the English language in the form of complete thoughts and sentences. You would think that no big deal. Huge barrier in my profession. Okay. So I can either have the conversation that I've had with them a million times, or I can build an AI review model to force them to do that, right? So what is my user's proposal? Sell it. Well, that's not helpful, right? Great. When I sell it, what am I going to do with the proceeds? This is either going to be the big reveal or I'm going to fall flat on my face. Reveal. Oh, wow, look at this nice animation. And then let me drag this out of the way. How will the proceeds from the sale be allocated, right? What am I doing? I'm passing their input to an agent that I've preloaded with my criteria of, I'm not giving away the form here. I want to force my user to give me sufficient information such that I know what are we doing with the asset so it's completely taken care of, right? I also have in here a limit on that where if they're just not going to get me there, I let them off the hook and I'll call them, right? They can say, skip, I'll discuss, or they can just run out of chances and I just give up on them because they clearly don't got it, right? So how will the proceeds? Okay, it's going to be 60-40. What's the problem with that? Who's the 60 and who's the 40? Let's see what the LLM, which is, I'm doing this with, I want to say 2.5 Flash. How's it going to be divided? Who will receive the 60% share of the proceeds, right? Okay. Husband will get 60%, wife will get 40%. Save details. Now we should be done. What do you know? Details complete. And we can review what we did and we have our information. And now this is stored as a JSON so that it passes to me so that when it's time to draft the document, it's all there, right? Did this on my sofa in my pajamas at nighttime. Um,
That was sick.
yeah. So what did I learn from this process? Okay, how do you do this, right? Wish I would have known this at the end, but as all things in life, you can only figure out how to do it once you do it the wrong way first. A great idea, past John should have known, was define your design system first before you start building the stuff so you don't have 9,000 independently sloppy pages of stuff. How do I do that? Hello, Claude Code. I am trying to design an intake form for my legal practice. I am a law firm of X, Y, and Z employees. My branding is attached here as the following SVG files. If you don't know what an SVG file is, again, see above this entire conversation. You need baseline knowledge to make this work. Um, our brand image is X, Y, and Z. I want to start working through a design system that represents that. I need you to give me all components that would be a part of a guided client intake flow. Please present to me as an HTML page your first draft of this so we can iterate on this further. Blah. Then you get this. You look through this. Hey, I like the primary action button. I don't like the primary action button. Can we change this to be XYZ? Can we do a cool little spinning animation? Now I've got all of my components. Now I want to do fancier animations. So now I'm talking to Claude Code. I'm being like, yo, I need, when things are submitted, I'll need an animation. When things are uploaded, I'll need an animation. When someone, oh, I gotta do this one because it's like my magnum opus, right? When someone submits their form, I want a super cool animation. God, look at that. I'd pay me, right? I'd feel like this person's reliable. Okay. Um, Now plug these into my pages. Now I've decided that every form submission, this is what it'll be. So at the end of all of my forms, right? Now I'm talking to Claude MD. Hey, this in this part of my app I'm developing, we're doing a series of forms. Every form will have the following general components: intake information, review page, submission page. The review page example is at blank. Ensure that anything you build always contains the review page specifically tailored to the inputs that come in. The submission form is at blank. Ensure that every page you build has a submission page wired up, blah, right? Okay. Um, Finally, oh, come on, localhost. Okay. So then last thing I'll show you is at the end of an intake, right? At the end of this initial intake, what do I want people to do? I want them to call me. I want them to associate humans with this, not just a faceless entity. What's a great way to do that? Photographs. These are old. I've improved on these. I need to update these assets. Is this real? No. Is this real? No. Is this real? No. It's AI. How did I do this? Blank repo. Hey, I want to create an image generation for my law firm. The purpose of these outputs will be blah, blah, blah. Install all dependencies I would need. Walk me through. Do research on what the models would be. Here's my use case. I need these to be output as WebP format because I need them to load fast. However, I need the fidelity to be blah, blah, right? Okay, you get the point, right? Um, Upload it here. Looks great. If I ever want different images of me for like when I first did these, my branding was my old law firm's blue and gray. That's why everybody's got it on blue and gray. So, and that's why this wash looks janky as hell because it looked way better when it was black on a dark background, right? Great. Now I can go to my generator app. I can go down my hall to where I have a green screen in one of my offices because I'm a crazy person. Okay. Um, Take new photos, new headshots, feed them in, create AI models of myself that I can then dress in whatever clothes I want. And then I can go to my bespoke image generator app that I made in 2 hours on my sofa and say, here is my current design system page. I want to generate outputs of John Haines in a in lighting and clothing that is consistent with the black and white brand style with transparency that will allow it to be placed on this page. It needs to be in 4K, whatever resolution, with a transparent background or with a gentle fade to white so it fits on the canvas, right? Boom, custom perfect asset. Throw it in here, and now it's better.
Yeah.
Um,
Get you a cream suit on there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Dude, cream. I want cream on cream. I want to get a Barack Obama crisis. I want tan suit, and I want people to be like, "How unprofessional is this guy?" Right? Uh,
Exactly.
and then, sort of last thing I'll show you, and I'm only going to show you this one page. So, what I have done, and in the process of doing, is as a longtime Clio advocate, it has I think, like I said, they've taken their eye off the ball and they do so much stuff that I don't need. And the things I do need, they either don't do or they do in the most janky way possible. So I finally got frustrated and I thought, well, I'll just do it myself. And the one thing I'll show, because I don't want to give away the farm on this, is I have all my forms. I now need to get my forms to my clients. How should I do that? Well, on this fake case, if what I need from this person is a information for a complaint for divorce, I drag over their complaint for divorce, and then after that, if they've got kids, I need a parenting plan. And if after that I want to know what their thoughts on the marital dissolution agreement are, I line up the forms I want to send them. I press start journey. This gets emailed to them through with a custom, nice branded email. I get a notification when they've opened it. I get a notification when they've submitted it. When they submit to it, they pop to the next one. Same thing. When it's all done, I now have all of this information as a nice JSON, which over here on the side, I can then go to my document generator, which I'm definitely not going to show to anyone. And I decided to look down like this when I said document generator for literally no reason. And now I can generate their complaint for divorce in, on average, 45 seconds, and their parenting plan in, on average, 2 minutes, and their marital dissolution agreement in, on average, 2 minutes. And I can spend my time rather than spending 3 hours typing an MDA I've typed 1,000 times before. I can spend it talking to my clients and explaining what their MDA is and how it works, solving the number one complaint about lawyers. Oh, he never talks to me. I can spend it looking at their file so that when I take this dude's wife's deposition, I can be like, why'd you text Bert 3 months ago right after you left the house? Right? Which I'll know because the element would have parsed it to me, rather than wasting huge amounts of my time on actions a computer can do for me. I can spend the same amount of time doing actions that only I can do, make the same amount of money, but deliver 150% of the quality for 100% of the price. That's the unlock of all of this, but only achievable if either you're willing to be like me and obsess like a crazy person, or you're willing to get with someone like you and either completely just say, take the wheel and tell me what I need to do, or how's about be a little bit helpful and have a clear vision of what you want, right? Or at least engage in a dialogue where you accept at the base level, you're going to have to, if you want the money machine to blast out dollar bills, you got to build the platform first, and then you got to bolt the money machine into it, and then you got to feed the blank dollar bills for it to print, right? You can't just skip to the money shooting all over you. You have to do that first. And if you want to do it, great. If you don't, cool. I got the money machine myself. That's fine. More blank dollar bills for me. But there's enough room for everybody, right? Like, why don't we all just do it? Because we can all serve our clients better and do a better job. And at least if you're engaged in family law, hate your life less, right? So you can decrease your stress from all like the the delivery of the removal of things that give, if you're like me, which I'm sure anyone that does family law is, having anxiety attacks all the time because you're worried you didn't check an email or you didn't do X, right? Solve those problems, but it's not magic. It takes time and it takes commitment to it.
That was that was pretty cool. That was awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks for taking us through that.
yeah,
I
sure.
One more thing I wanted to ask as well, if you would be open to sharing
Hmm.
before like so just a couple of closing questions at the end. Would you be cool to show sort of inside of either anti-gravity or in a clause something to
Yeah, I can show you sort of what like, let's just open and see what I've had running in the background that's taken me down to 22% battery. What are you doing, Apple? What's wrong with your incredibly good battery life as a longtime Windows? So I stopped using anti-gravity when Google decided to like nix their Google Workspace like anti-gravity Connect. And I mean, part of it was an exodus, I think, of like literally everyone when they decided to make anti-gravity IDE and anti-gravity agentic. And I
Yeah.
thought, why would I use this? And so I'm using Zed now, which is it is ridiculous because I'm so sure that anyone that's like a developer is like, bro, are you stupid? Like this is like me driving the Ferrari when the only thing I've ever driven is a minivan, right? But so far I have managed not to crash into the wall.
Yeah.
Um, but what I'm doing right now is my law firm has just merged with another law firm, and um, her firm used Box for their storage. I use Google Drive. Her firm uses Clio. I use Clio. I need to import her cases from Clio. I need to import her documents from Box to then put them all on Google Drive. And I previously to today had set up my own import where I grab from Clio all of my matters. I grab from Clio all of my documents. I then rename them using an LLM based upon the content of the documents and move them into Google Drive. So what I've been working on today is retrofitting that to work with Box. I have been using the OpenSpec skill, which is outrageously helpful to me, a generally ignorant person, right? I fake it really well, but that's probably every lawyer knows this. Fake it really well, but under that thin veneer of confidence is an ocean of ignorance, right? That I just try and mask. OpenSpec is insanely helpful, and all I've got here is just Claude code in the terminal. So I've got Zed pulled up, and what I just did was a box case import, and I mean, what you see here is I was just letting this go, right? I was just applying. I did, an explore proposal, which are elements of the skill, right? Explore, gain context for writing a plan, propose, write plan, apply plan, right? That's the general, appears to me accepted agentic cycle, right?
Yeah.
Get context, figure out plan, implement plan, verify plan, repeat.
Yeah. Can you
And
show us maybe a couple of prompts that you've shot in, if you can?
I'll do you one better, right? Like I'll tell you. So this is none of this has had a code review, right? Okay. And I've got sort of I built out Claude MD to suggest to me the appropriate code review level based upon the severity of the changes we've made. Like this is where you come in this enterprise is then I get this done. And I'm like, dude, Masai, hook it up and now take my working product and make this not Swiss cheese garbage, right? Like you have to be savvy enough to know that. So literally all I would do next, which I won't run this now, but I would just say, do the code review, bro, right?
Yeah.
Bloop. And it goes and it's going to come back and it's going to return results, right? Lawyers, honestly, I think are in an extremely unique position with like, I mean, vibe coding, but AI interactions in general in the ability to articulate with a high degree of specificity your desired result is like a superpower. And that's kind of our job, right? So I do think part of the reasons I've been successful with this, again, if it's not evident from this entire interview, is I have a high capacity to say a bunch of words reasonably artfully, right? Reasonably able to communicate not just a general concept, but a specific concept in language, which is what these models need to give you the output, right? It's just got to be rather than I am trying to convince a dude in a robe that my client should be successful because of all of the spin I'm putting on these facts. I instead need to be able to say, you know, great example on this project. I need to get Sarah's files from Box into Google Drive. One way to do that is to say, I need to get Sarah's files from Box into Google Drive. Another way to say that is, we have previously created an import capability in our app that connects my Clio Drive files to my Google Drive. I now want to take what we've done and make it work to drawing from Box into Google Drive. Look at context 7 for most recent documentation to help us form a plan on how we connect to that API. Ask me any follow-up questions if any of my prompt has been unclear. Go ahead, bloop, 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 bloop. It goes, it comes back. Hey, I've looked at the code. I've found that, yeah, we could definitely retrofit this. Some decisions I need from you. What are we going to do with the files, right? Hey, I want to do blah. And it goes, right? I mean, it's really, it's not hard. And I don't, again, I don't say that in like from a place of, oh, dude, I'm now John's a software developer, right? No, I'm not a crazy person, but now I can communicate with a software developer in a language they understand, the code and the vision, because me just saying to you, like, I would never be able to, with sufficient specificity, explain to you, maybe something like this. Okay, fair enough. But the more robust parts of this, intake forms, etc., I would never be able to communicate to you I want to get X, Y, and Z information in any way that's a valuable use of either of our time, right? You don't want to hear me rant about, bro, you gotta make sure that the counties for people where they got married has to pull from a global list because no one ever knows what county they got married in, but the certificate that goes to the Department of Vital Health for the state requires the county in which they're married, right? Like you're not going to know to ask that. I'm not going to know to tell you. But if I spend my time building it out and I'm doing the forms, then I'm going to know, oh, hell, I need to capture the county here. And then I can think to myself, well, they're not going to know. Is there a way that you can pre-populate with counties like they do on things? Oh, yeah, definitely. We'll just, have a database that it pulls from, right? Cool. That's the unlock. And again, to end to end my thought, I do think lawyers are uniquely positioned because I would say at least I hope we have an above average capability of precision of language, as I literally can't say the word precision of language, right? Specificity of goal and ability to think through a problem in its component parts. Like that's what you need to do this. And hopefully everyone can do it.
Yeah. That was sick, man. I think just the last couple of things. Um, One is how do you, right? It's sort of an interesting situation now, right? In the sense of 12 to 20, 24 months ago, it was really hard to do these sorts of things, right? Even for me to go into a firm and do it, I would have to do everything manually, right? Either write code or build automations by hand or whatever it is, right?
Hmm.
Now I think it's a lot easier to build this stuff, and I think it unlocks like the level of hands-on specificity that you get when you're the person who you are the end user basically,
Yep.
and you can speak directly to what you're looking for. I guess what do you think, like high level, how does this work out in terms of law firms in the future? What does it make sense for lawyers to learn how to do? What does it not make sense for lawyers to learn how to do? How is value provided to law firms? I know it's a loaded question, but
Yeah. I think the first part of that answer is it depends on what you do as a lawyer, right? Everything we've talked about over this is unique to sort of not just like divorces, right, but sort of state court, small, solo to small firm, because we have these components of I need higher volume, I need to intake people, and so your value gain through friction points are going to be different, right? If you represent Goldman Sachs, you don't need an intake form, you know. Um, so I think what's going to happen is the problem's going to be solved from two directions. I think your massive enterprise spins, your Harveys, your Clio, what they call it, Vincent, something like that.
it's an AI.
I think they're going to point that at solving a different problem that I can't really speak to. My generally uninformed exterior vision is those sorts of law firms that represent those larger interests have like volume-based needs for this technology, which is much different, right? Just crunching through discovery, crunching through new regulations, crunching through contracts for M&A, right? Um, I think that will be reduced to agentic enterprise workflows that the employees of those places won't need to know and will eventually just come into existence.
Yeah.
And so then I think from the other end, what you're going to see is people like me solving the sorts of problems that, solo and small firms do interface: criminal defense, estate work, family work, your general civil litigation at a smaller scale. PI will get solved because of all the money in PI, right? Medical records, that's all so ready for LLMs, right? Um, but I think you'll see, like I said, me and people like me solving for that. And my sort of Babe Ruth cold shot over the left field wall is I think you're going to see a vanishing of the middle.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see small firms that figure it out and then grow in volume and sort of amalgamate locally and then regionally and become, you get like your Morgans and Morgans of non-PI. I think that PI until this, what we've been talking about, was exclusively the area where you could have that sort of larger presence because of the dollars to cost that was available. I think LLMs allow you to have, sure, smaller total dollars. I'm not going to be making PI money, at least not. I'm still getting my helicopter, but it'll probably be, take a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think you'll see that happen and more amalgamation of people that have figured out expanding because that's what this will allow you to do. And then I think the medium firm that caters to the small or medium business locally, I think what'll happen is they're going to get absorbed by these like the mega firms are going to become even more mega firms, right? It's going to be like oh, what's that Steven Seagal or no, Sylvester Stallone movie? Demolition Man, where in the future all restaurants are Taco Bell, right? It's going to be in the future like all law firms are like three on the big firm stuff. I don't think that's tomorrow. I'd say a decade for that to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully that's in some way responsive to what you asked me. I sort of fell in love with the sound of my own voice there, as I'm apt to do.
Yeah. No, and yeah, man, I think it's going to be interesting for sure. It's one of the most interesting spaces to be in right now for sure.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's AI has allowed the legal profession to basically catch up to where everyone else is. It is insane that in 2019 I could order a uh, a hula hoop from Amazon from my phone and have it delivered to my front door 2 hours later by a drone, depending on where you live. But at the exact same time, the way that the vast majority of family law practitioners are gathering information is come to my office and write on a printed out document your first name that we printed from a docx file that we've been using since 1994 and hand it to me, right? It's insanity.
Yeah.
And obviously Clio had solved some of that, but yeah, I see most of this as just the legal profession getting today to where it should have been a decade ago. Just the dollar spend to create these bespoke solutions was prohibitive prior to coding agents, since now it's not anymore.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, because you'll know this, but like a lot of these custom software builds were like low six-figure builds. You know what I mean? To get these built
Mm-hmm.
out for them custom, and now
Yeah,
it's you're looking at probably a tenth of that, if and then even less, obviously, if you do it yourself as well.
yeah. And then back then you spend the six figures, and because there's no ability to communicate what the product needs to be, you're not going to get something that works, and then you're going to conclude, to reuse my metaphor, the car crashed, so the problem's the car, right? And it's not.
Yeah. All right. Well, any last thoughts? Any last thoughts or messages maybe to attorneys? What would you tell yourself sort of at the beginning of this whole process?
What the advice I would give myself that I would immediately not listen to is, and as I say, it's not actually the right advice, but it's wisdom that you should at least know. If you just jump in with both feet into this, you're going to waste huge amounts of time because you're not going to know enough about what you're doing. So, a wise way to do this would be build out, watch some YouTube stuff, build out a few little small things in a more intentional manner. Figure out what OpenSpec is, figure out sort of what's the file structure, right? And then start building something. But I would temper that by saying probably the first thing you do is just jump in, but don't then go down the rabbit hole, right? Just create in an afternoon a tool for yourself that you want, whatever that might be, and be amazed by how easy it was. But then press pause because you're drinking the Kool-Aid in that moment. You don't know enough, right? Just realize the goal so you know, oh, this is possible. And now figure out what OpenSpec is or the equivalent, right? Figure out what Claude.md is, figure out what parallel agents are, and then you can go.
Yeah. I think that was fantastic. And thanks again for doing it. You want to
Yeah.
tell the people where they can find you if they want to find you?
Yeah, so honestly, the best way, I'll tell you, if you want to interact with me in a way that makes me money, which would be great, right? Um, I am not yet, but I will be in this year willing to a small number of users let access to my document generator. Take my word for it, it's insane. And the best way to reach me would be via email. That is John, John, at, let's just do my law firm, at velolegalgroup.com, VELO legalgroup.com. Um, I'm actually too willing to talk to people ad nauseum, so I'll probably just give you all sorts of free advice that I shouldn't give you if you want. But if anything I've talked about makes you think, oh, I just want John to solve my problems for me, hey, I'm happy to help to do that in exchange for dollars, because I am still a lawyer and I'm trying to buy a helicopter. Uh, Otherwise, my girlfriend's definitely going to leave me and I wouldn't know what to do without her. And now you got to put this in the video so that I can make her watch this and be like, I told you, I always bring you up in every conversation, right?
Oh, for sure. All right, perfect. Well, thanks for doing this. I'm gonna go ahead and hit stop.